Welcome to this week's video blog. Tim Weigel, New York State Grape IPM program, here with Andy Musa, who is a member of the Lake Erie Regional Grape Program with Penn State Cooperative Extension. Checking the Network for Environment and Weather Applications website, or NEWA, www.newa.cornell.edu. Looking at the berry moth model that we have up there. And I see that we're coming up on, in the next week or so, we'll be coming up on 16, 20 degree days. So what's the significance of that?
Well, again, that would be time for the emergence of the third generation of grape berry moth. So growers at this point, since we're getting close to that, should be checking NEWA hopefully on a daily basis.
Mm-hmm.
Check the site that's closest to their vineyard, and then that would give them the growing degree days for their area, and then they should follow the recommendations on that. For instance, now they'll probably be talking about when to scout.
Right.
And you mentioned, as we were talking before this, the time frame, degree days, when they should be out scouting.
Yeah, like 1470 to 1620, so you can actually be scouting up to the time period that you need to spray.
So that's the first step that growers should be doing. They should be going out scouting at that period and determining what percentage of cluster injury that they have. And if they get to that 15%, then in conjunction with checking with NEWA, then they can determine, should I spray or not? Now, hopefully, when I'm talking about that, they have already rated their vineyards as to low risk, moderate risk, or high risk. So your high risk vineyards would automatically, get you put in an insecticide application. Mm-hmm. But it's important that they also scout, because in your low and moderate vineyards, might not necessarily be called for a spray if you're just going by calendar based. Right. But we've heard from growers, both you and I, that berry moth have appeared out of nowhere.
Came out of nowhere.
Well,
does that actually happen?
Not that I have seen. Usually, what happens is you'll get a buildup of berry moth over the years, and if the year's conducive for berry moth development, if it's been a mild winter, then all of a sudden you might get into a season, and in areas where they usually don't have it, it might show up. And that's why it's important not just to look at areas where berry moth is, but to go out there and to scout low risk vineyards and moderate risk vineyards.
Yeah, okay. And typically when we talk about scouting, we'll pick 4 sections of a vineyard: 2 on the border where you expect berry moth, if it's going to be there, it'll be at the borders, and then 2 in the interior. And the interior is to take care of exactly what you were talking about, of it just appearing from nowhere.
Right.
Because the pupae get blown with leaf litter, and so if there's a way for that, if your weeds tend to get higher in some spots, it collects that pupae, then all of a sudden you can have a great berry moth hot spot where you didn't have it before. So you mentioned scouting. If I'm going to go out and scout now, let's say Concords, I have green grapes out there. What am I looking for?
At this point, for instance, depending again on variety, if you have Concord, a lot of times what you can see is what we call stings, or it's a red discoloration of the berry. That is very distinct with Concord. Other varieties like Niagara, certain wine varieties, you don't get that. So you wouldn't look for the red discoloration, but what you would look for is holes in the berry. You'd look for berries being webbed together, and that would indicate. And then you could break it open to actually see if you have larvae or frass inside the berry. Then that's an indicator that you have grape berry moth.
Okay. And so right now we're looking at a 15% damaged cluster threshold. And a damaged cluster is actually 1 or more. It only takes one berry to be damaged to make a damaged cluster. Just what we would suggest, I think, is to, as Andy mentioned, just keep checking the NEWA website on a regular basis. It'll give you the degree days and some of the pest management suggestions as far as scouting and that. And then when it comes time to make a decision on whether or not to spray, it'll also give you some options on what to use. So with that, I'd like to wrap it up for this week. And as always, if you have any comments or you have suggestions on future podcasts, please leave it in the comment section below or get in touch with one of the members of the Lake Erie Regional Grape Program.